Well, I'm here with the Sonubaits team today to talk to you all about ground baits for river fishing. I'm here on the mighty River Trent at the Burton Joyce stretch. It's early season, I'm not expecting big bags, but we're going to look at how to mix the ground bait, how to get it right, how to introduce it into the peg, the consistency you're looking for, and why we choose certain types of ground bait. Let's look at the details. I'm sure we're going to have a great day. When I come to a big river like the Trent, I know that it's going to be really powerful, there's lots of flow, and there's usually lots of fish. Be it small little fish, perch, roach, bleak, dace, there's always going to be a lot of fish there. I need a mix that's really heavy, sticky, and sort of can carry lots of bait to the bottom. That's always what I'm looking for when I come to a big river, such as the Trent, maybe the Wye, the Severn, the Yare, any of those sort of big, powerful rivers. This is the sort of mix that I'm going for. Now, of course, Black River would be the go-to. You'd go to a river style mix. The beauty about this river mix is it's a bit of an all-rounder. It's not particularly coarse. There's a really nice bread content in there, crushed hemp content, but it's a fine mix. It's not a really coarse mix. It's a mix that can be used everywhere. I use this actually for roach fishing on the Steny as well. So you can see how sort of universal it is. But it makes the core of nearly every venue that I go to when I'm natural water style fishing. So I've actually got two of those. I've got two Black Rivers, so that's going to be the base of the mix. Now I need something to make it really sticky. Now the Black Bream is a sticky mix. It's the sort of mix that as time goes on, there's a lot of sugars caught up in the ingredients in here and they release into the mix and they make it really sticky. So I love using this Black Bream. It's an excellent mix and it complements the Black River absolutely perfectly because it means it's stickier. Now today I'm confronted with what I would call a low, probably normal river. There's not a massive flow, it's not particularly deep, so that's why I've got two Black River and one Black Bream. If I'd have come here today and the river would have been up, coloured, I'd have substituted out one of the Black River mixes and put two Black Bream in. So in my 3 kilos of mix, you can see how I'm using these ingredients to get that right consistency. Obviously, it's important that I sort of explain to you when I would use each one so you can utilise that. Now, that mix is going to carry a lot of feed, but there's also some ingredients I can give to that mix to give it that extra punch. Whenever I come on a big river somewhere like that, I love to add hemp to the mix. So I've got in here some crushed hemp. Now crushed hemp is really easy to prepare. Personally, I don't like to use it straight from the bag into the mix because crushed hemp without getting access to water can be very active and float, and I actually don't want that. I want a nice sticky mix here. So what I did last night was I got a pint of this crushed hemp and actually put on it 3 pints of boiling water from the kettle. And this morning you can see, look at that, that's taken on all that hot water. Everything in this bucket now sinks and I've got basically well over a pint of feed, of crushed hemp feed, and that is an amazing addition to the mix. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to utilise that to mix it completely. So I'm going to do that for you now so you can see the process in action. You'll see here I've got some tinned hemp and some fluoro rocks, but we'll speak about those in a minute. So 3 bags of mix. When I'm coming to a river such as the Trent, I'm going to need 3 kilos. You know, I might want to ball some in, I might want to top up during the match, I might even want some for a feeder. So I need to make sure that I've got enough ground bait to cover my day. So 3 kilos, then goes to Black River first. And we're lucky these days, a lot of the time I am using a drill to mix my ground bait. If you don't have a drill, make sure you whisk the dry ingredients together first. That's quite an important element, all right? You can actually see, if I get a bit of this bream on my hand here, how coarse it is. There's a lot of bigger pieces in this bream mix. It is a more coarse mix. It's designed for those big fish such as bream, and as a result it ends up, they release a lot of like I said, sugars and that, which make the mix quite sticky. So what I'm going to do, literally this 3 pints of water and the pint of hemp. The reason I do that is because I know that I can take at least 3 pints of water into this mix. I'll probably end up taking a lot more. I'm not even bothered about mixing it up because I'm going to use the drill, and I'm literally going to pour the lot in. All right, so straight in here, you can see all the hemp. Get it in there. Absolutely perfect. Don't forget, we're river fishing here. This is a really coarse, heavy mix. So excuse the drill for a second. When I was younger, I used to fish a lot of matches on the River Yare, and you needed 5 or 6 kilos of ground bait, and I'd spend about 2 hours Friday night mixing it up. Fortunately now with the drill, it literally takes me about 2 seconds, so I'm loving life now when I go on rivers. But look at this mix. It's really dark, it's now rich with food, it's got lots of broken hemp pieces in there. It really is an incredible mix. It's a mix that I absolutely love to use. Now, just sort of getting a feel for this now, as it is right now, it'd probably be nice to use, but I've only just introduced the water. This is something that I would do first thing in the morning, to be honest, either at home before I left or at the draw, something like that, you know, well before your session out on the bank. So this is going to need more water than this. I am just going to give this a chance to absorb this initial water. I'll then probably top it up with a little bit more, and we'll come back to it and have a look at what we add into that mix just to give it that finishing touch. So I've got plenty of ground bait mixed up here, and it's taken on the water. It's a really nice consistency now. You can see if I squeeze it, look, you can see how tacky it is. It's a really tacky, sticky mix, and it's perfect for what I want to do today. So what do I want to do? I want to initially put a big bed down on the bottom, so I'm going to ball it in today. I'm going to ball about 12 balls in. I'm not going to get all my ground bait and use it in one go, so I'm going to just take it. It's probably around about a third out. All right, so I've got quite a lot of ground bait here in the bucket, but I've got some left in case I sort of get it wrong or anything like that. And I'm going to add 2 ingredients to this sort of core really to make this bed. First of all, a tin of hemp. I've got some extra hemp for loose feeding, but I do want some hemp on the bottom in the initial bombardment. So what I actually do is open the hemp, I just drain the excess liquid off because I don't need that in the mix, and I'm going to empty this full tin of hemp into my mix. All right, so that's going to be in there, bits of hemp all over the bottom. The idea of this is a nice bed of feed, so this is where fluoro rocks come in as well. These are really brightly coloured, and they're going to be little flecks on the bottom. They're always going to be there because they're dead heavy. Fish will eat the odd one, and they'll come in and they're inquisitive, and it's really good. So I'm going to be really generous with these. I'm going to put a nice big sampling of those in. I'm going to get my trusty drill because I'm lazy like that. And that has given me the perfect mix. Now look at that, you can see there's odd flecks of colour in there, which is going to keep fish looking around, eating. There's bits of hemp in there, and now obviously the mix is really nice and sticky, and I can introduce a few live baits in there as well for my balls for balling in. So let's get down onto the bank, let's have a little look at my baits, what I've brought with me, and how I'm going to introduce those into this initial mix. So I want to introduce some live baits into this nice sticky mix as part of this bed on the bottom. And on a river like this, I don't know if I'm going to be catching on maggots, casters, I'm not really too sure. So, you know, pinkies are a really nice bait because they're small, they create activity on the bottom. And what I've actually done is I've bagged up around half a pint here, and I've had them in a bag for about 2 or 3 days. So they're obviously at the moment, they're not crawling. And just before I make my balls, I'm going to unwrap this now, and I'm going to put a good half of these pinkies into this mix. Now they are squiggling as I expected a few would, and then I'm going to put a decent handful of casters in as well. So I've got a nice selection of live baits in this mix. Now these pinkies are going to desperately try and break these balls up, so if I didn't have a really sticky mix like I've got, then obviously my balls would just be falling to pieces and it'd be, you know, no good whatsoever. But I'm going to be able to make these really hard. You can see there, look, there's loads of food now in this mix. And that is really, really good, because it means that I'm going to be able to ball in and put a nice bed of bait on the bottom. So I'm going to make these balls up now, and it is really important. I'm going to really squeeze these hard because of this element of bait that's in here. Okay, so 2 hands, and it's such a sticky mix. I mean, that is hardly taking any squeezing to get them like that. I'm just going to round them off there so they're nice and firm. Look at that, full of bait. Really nice to introduce into my peg. So I'm going to make around about a dozen of those, because I think that's going to be a nice introduction into the swim. It's going to take a while to break down because the mix is so sticky, but the live baits will help and they will introduce that element of bait into the peg. So I'll just make these balls up and we'll go onto the box and we'll get them in. Okay, so my pole is angled well downstream. I've got my balls ready to go. I'm going to nip each one just to make sure. I can just feel how heavy and sticky this mix is. I'm going to try and put them on the pole tip, slightly inside the pole tip, just create that bed of area that I can run the rig over. Let's have a go. Beautiful. Couple of nips on each one, making sure they're solid. On the money. So I'm not too concerned left and right, you know, as long as there is all within a couple of meters. I'm trying to create that area to run over, to be honest. And you can see, and you can just hear by the way the balls go in, they're going in really hard, even though there's all this bait in. That's because that mix is so sticky, and it's got all the properties that I want to hold that bait in. You can see, you know, other lighter mixes would just be breaking up straight away. So this is really working perfectly at the moment. Really going in well. A couple of big ones to finish on, look, get in there. Got one in a little bit shorter, that was probably about a metre back, so I'm happy with that. And that one's the same, right on it. So a really nice spread of bait. Few live pinkies in the bottom here, but hardly any from what I put in. Look, little handful. Always going to get that, a few crawling out, which is absolutely perfect. I've now created that area that I can run that rig over, and hopefully the fish will come in all aggressive. I cannot wait to put a bait on. I'll talk to you about the rest of the baits I've got here and how we're going to feed throughout the day. And also we'll have a look at the rigs. Right, well, as you've seen, I've introduced the ground bait into the peg. There's plenty of feed there, there's plenty of bait down on the bottom. Now, I always feel whenever I come to a river and I want to fish a pole, I need to cover the different paces that the river has. So by that I mean, obviously the river's running through at one pace, but I'm sure there's the baits are doing different things on the bottom. There'll be an odd bait caught behind a stone, you know, wedged in place. There might be an odd bait just trickling down the peg, and then of course there'll be any bait that's suspended in the flow, loose feed or something, that'll be running through at the pace. So I've set up 3 rigs today to counter that. First of all, I've set up a rig for just running through at the pace, and that's a pencil style float. So that's a gram in size, and I'm just going to literally use that to lower in and allow to run through at the pace of the river. And obviously anything that wants to attack that, I can then strike at. I'm probably not expecting to use that rig a lot. I'll probably only use that rig to search around the peg. The first thing I always do when I get to a river is get out what I always call the medium rig, the tripping rig, the one that's just going to trundle through the peg, and try and gauge what sort of weight I need for that. Now today, I've gone for a simple 1.5 grams round body float. Okay, you can see I've got an Olivet approximately 50 centimeters above from the hook, absolutely spot on. And then there's 3 droppers below. These are number 9s. Because this float's 1.5 grams, I want to be sure that I've got some control down there. So these number 9s effectively are just going to keep everything nice and tight as the bait trundles through the peg. And this 1.5 grams goes through really nicely. I've got a nice length of line above the float, probably I'd say just over a metre and a half, something like that. Not a really short line. I need to be able to run it through the peg and search the peg for all the different fish that there might be. I've got 0.10 hook length to an 18 N30 hook, so nice small neat setup there, nothing too massive. There are a lot of bonus fish in this length of the River Trent, so if I do hook a big perch, a big skimmer or a bream, I do want to be able to get it out, and I know I will on that tackle. And then I need a float for putting through the river that little bit slower. How am I going to put the rig through at almost less than half pace? I'm talking almost at a standstill, just really slowly through the peg, because sometimes that's how those bigger fish want the presentation. So I've got a 3 gram rig, so I've doubled up really. If I've got a 1.5 grams, so I've got a 1.5 grams and a 3 gram rig, and that 3 gram rig's got a slightly shorter length of line to it, to the pole tip, and it just allows me to control the rig beautifully through the peg, and obviously striking at those bites when they come, and hopefully there'll be an odd bigger fish. Now, I'm not sure which to start on today. I'm going to go for the 1.5 grams. I've had a few run throughs just to make sure there's no weed or anything, and it's all pretty straightforward, and they are the rigs. However, I do want to touch on the baits I've got here as well, because along with the ground bait, you saw that I had some tinned hemp. I absolutely love tinned hemp. It comes really good quality hemp, nicely split. Just literally open a tin and use it. Don't have to annoy my wife by cooking it in the kitchen. Dead handy really. So obviously that's just ready to go. I've brought 3 excess tins along with a tin in the mix, so I can loose feed hemp if I want to. I obviously would never come on the river without maggots. I've got a nice mix of bronze and reds in there. I do like a red maggot on the hook and a bronze at times, so I always just bring both. I then think you can pick and choose and decide what's best on the day. And I've actually brought nearly 3 pints of those because I know that I might be loose feeding those quite heavily today, so I'm not 100% sure. I've got the pinkies, a few pinkies for the hook there. Not going to loose feed those or anything like that. And you saw I got these beautiful casters, which I put in the mix as well. Again, just a hook bait option. So the pinkies and the casters are just there for a hook bait option. And of course, the maggots and the hemp are there to loose feed. I will start with a maggot on the hook because it tends to be the #1 bait. So just a single red maggot. And what I'm looking to do is I'm probably going to loose feed the hemp every run down. I'd say about 20 grains, 20 or 30 grains. Every single run down, I'm going to loose feed that hemp. That's heavy, it drives the fish to the bottom. And then probably on the 4th run down, I'll loose feed a few maggots just to give them a taste for those live baits. The trouble with maggots is if you're loose feeding all the time, there's lots of small fish here, and I'm convinced they just get eaten. So I probably just do 1 pouch full of, say, 50 maggots every 4th run down, just to drive some maggots down to the bottom as well. One thing you really need to think about on a river is where you feed that bait. So obviously where I threw my ground bait in, I know that that's going straight down, and then the fish tend to sit literally just off the back of it as it's breaking up. So with that in mind, I'm going to loose feed the hemp in exactly the same spot that the ground bait went in. Hemp sinks really quickly, and I think that's just going to be landing off the back of the ground bait. Maggots, I'm going to feed slightly more upstream, so it'll be pretty much straight in front of me, the maggots. Again, just to run over, and I think they'll end up way down the peg, but I don't want to be feeding them right up the peg. That's not really the idea. I don't want to drive any fish right up. I don't mind a few fish drifting down because then it tends to naturally encourage them to come back up onto your bait. So, single red maggot. Let's have a run through and let's see if we can catch anything. Well, I've had a really interesting session today. We've caught a lovely stamp of fish. These, you know, cracking river dace. A really enjoyable fish. It's not been absolutely solid. Probably caught, I'd say, 30 odd dace, 6, 7 perch, something like that. Nice net of fish, probably pushing on 7, 8 pound. Nice fishing, but it's been one of those where I've really had to work at it. What I'm really happy about is that bed of ground bait that I put in at the start. I've chosen not to top it up today because I put a lot in at the start in terms of quantity of ground bait, and there hasn't been loads of bites. I've used the loose feed to eke out the peg, but all the time I know that I'm running this rig over that lovely bed of bait, and I'm sure that's why I've managed to eke a few fish out today. We actually stopped halfway and we're having a chat. It's been rock hard, the river today, typical early season, but an enjoyable day, catching those fish, making the most of it, and I hope you've learned something about getting your ground bait right on a river.